In the morning, citizens, welcome to today's News and Guidance show for Tuesday, November 4th, coming at you live from New York. Let's look at today's items.
And today, we really do have one of the most, demanding stacks we've probably ever tackled here.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It really is.
We're being asked to dive deep into a reality that's just marked by some pretty profound systemic failures, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And escalating threats.
Absolutely. The sources we've got today, they force us to pivot, from the highest level global cyber warfare. We're talking secret digital weapons.
Yeah, the serious stuff.
All the way down to the most immediate, tangible crises hitting people right here on the streets in New York City.
Specifically, the fallout from that ongoing federal government shutdown, it's really starting to bite.
So that means we've got to somehow connect zero-day exploits being used by, say, China-linked state actors
to the very real, very urgent plight of, 1.8 million New Yorkers who depend on emergency food benefits.
That's the challenge. And, the sobering reality of this deep dive sometimes.
It really is.
But, okay, before we jump into this crucial analysis, a huge thanks to our fantastic supporters. The Billish Bitcoiner, Oshi, BJ, and Barn Miner for their orders, jerky making and virtual shopping mall building, sending you a hearty ooh-wee.
Ooh-wee. And yeah, our mission today, as always, is to give you the context you need to, cut through all that noise. Because there's an underlying theme, isn't there? Connecting these things that seem so separate, cyber espionage, AI, trying to make money, a food benefit crisis.
It's about trust, or the lack of it.
Exactly. Trust in our digital infrastructure, trust in where we get our information, and maybe most critically right now, trust in our governments to actually deliver the basics.
So we'll be unpacking the sophistication of the threats, but also, analyzing just how fragile our systems seem to be right now. Okay, let's unpack this first part. It's definitely rooted in national security. The digital battlefield is looking incredibly hot right now.
It really is.
We have to start with nation-state actors and the kind of tools they're using, the most valuable, the most secret ones in their digital arsenal. Hashtag tag 1.1 nation-state espionage and zero-day exploits.
Right. And the key concept to start with here, especially if you're prepping for a meeting or just trying to get up to speed, is the zero-day exploit.
Define that quickly for us.
Sure. So a zero-day is basically a software vulnerability, a flaw that the developer, the company who made the software, they have no idea it exists.
None at all.
Zero. That's why it's called zero-day. There's literally 0 days of warning, no patch available, which makes it, a perfectly hidden digital weapon.
A secret key, essentially. And who's using these kinds of master keys right now?
Well, one group that's been exceptionally active is linked to China Bronze Butler. They're also known as TIC.
Okay.
And they made headlines because they were exploiting a zero-day, specifically targeting something called the Motex Landscope Endpoint Manager.
And what is that exactly, the Endpoint Manager?
It's a really crucial management tool. Big organizations use it to secure and manage all the devices, computers, servers connected to their internal network.
Okay, so this isn't just like hacking a public website. This is going after the very software that's supposed to manage security across a whole company.
Exactly. It's hitting them at an operational level, deep inside.
And what was the goal? Why use such a valuable zero-day?
Well, they use this vulnerability not just for a quick peek, but to actually deploy an updated version of their own custom malware. It's called Goktor.
Goktor sounds like what it is.
Pretty much. It's a sophisticated backdoor, gives them persistent, hidden access to the networks they infect.
And the fact they needed a zero-day just to get it installed.
That tells you a lot. The sheer resources you need finding or buying a zero-day, then weaponizing it, shows this wasn't some random crime.
No.
This was a focused, highly funded espionage mission aimed at getting deep, persistent network penetration.
And when you say resources, we should remember, right, 0 days can sell for millions on the black market.
Absolutely millions. So Bronze Butler, they're not just some opportunistic hackers. This is state-level stuff. Serious strategic patience involved.
And that strategic patience, that long-term thinking, it leads perfectly into the next nightmare scenario, supply chain breaches.
Ah, yes. This is where the threat becomes truly systemic and maybe even harder to detect over the long run.
We saw a really high-stakes example involving Ribbon Communications. Now, this isn't a name you'd see on your phone, probably.
No, they're not a consumer brand. Ribbon is critical infrastructure. They supply communications tech to major U.S. government agencies, global telecom companies.
So the backbone stuff, secure communications.
Exactly. They're integral to it.
So what made the Ribbon breach so much worse than, say, a typical hack? What elevates it?
It's the timeline. The sheer terrifying timeline. These nation-state attackers, whoever they were, had access inside Ribbon systems to their intellectual property.
For how long?
For months. They remained undetected for months. They first got in way back in December 2024.
December 2024, so almost a year of potential access.
Well, undetected for months within that period. Just think about that. Months of quiet, unfettered access inside a company that manages network designs, communication protocols for, key government clients.
What could they even do with that kind of access?
Oh, map out network weak spots, steal the blueprints for future secure networks, maybe plant long-term monitoring tools that are incredibly hard to find later.
It just poisons the whole well, doesn't it? If you can't trust the company supplying your secure communications gear.
Then you have to question everything. Every call, every data transfer, every security measure built on that potentially compromised foundation. It undermines fundamental trust.
Which is precisely why the threat from outside, as scary as it is, sometimes it's overshadowed by the threat from inside.
Exactly. And that brings us to the Peter Williams case, a former executive at L3 Harris Trenchant. This really brings that systemic failure right into focus.
Right. L3 Harris is a major U.S. defense contractor. Williams was high up, position of huge trust.
Supreme trust.
Yeah.
And he pleaded guilty to stealing highly sensitive U.S. defense cyber exploit data.
And we're not talking about, company secrets about next year's product. This was the government's own digital offensive weaponry, classified tools.
The nation's cyber weapons. And what did he do with them?
He sold them.
To whom?
To a Russian vulnerability broker.
Wow. So doesn't that just illustrate the point? You can spend billions on firewalls, on fancy threat detection.
But if a trusted insider decides to walk out with the crown jewels motivated by greed?
The whole system can just collapse. It bypasses everything.
It's the ultimate single point of failure. It's not just losing the data. It's knowing that those tools, those exploits, are now potentially in the hands of, an adversary, ready to be used.
Williams basically armed a competitor, a rival nation potentially, with America's own secret defense playbook.
Well, for money, it's just the highest stakes collision of security failure and pure avarice. Hashtag tag 1.2, ransomware evolution and evasion.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. From state spying to organized crime looking for profit. Ransomware gangs. We're seeing just as much rapid technical evolution there, too. They adapt incredibly quickly.
Yeah, and we got a really clear, pretty alarming warning from CISA recently about a major vulnerability being actively exploited right now.
Let's just remind folks, CISA is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the U.S. government agency trying to protect civilian networks and, push for better security everywhere.
Right. So what specific threat are they flagging?
They're warning about a high-severity bug. It's a privilege escalation bug, specifically in the fundamental Linux kernel.
Okay, Linux kernel. Why is that such a big deal?
Because Linux runs, practically the entire back end of the internet. Cloud servers, huge databases, corporate infrastructure. So much runs on Linux.
So if there's a serious bug.
And it lets an attacker escalate their privileges. That means they go from being maybe a restricted user to having full root control, complete control over core systems.
And CISA says ransomware gangs are actively using this now.
Actively weaponizing it, yes, which changes the whole attack profile, doesn't it?
Yeah, instead of just hitting, say, individual laptops.
They can go straight for the central nervous system of a big company, where the really big money is. Encrypt the main servers. The whole business just grinds to a halt. Much bigger ransom potential.
Okay, so they're exploiting core vulnerabilities, but they're also getting smarter about hiding, right? Evasion.
Oh, definitely. We have to talk about this tactic used by the Quillen ransomware group. It shows a really acute understanding of security blind spots.
What are they doing?
They're using the Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL.
WSL, wait, that's the thing Microsoft built so developers could run Linux tools inside Windows, right? For convenience.
Exactly. It's supposed to be for productivity, for compatibility.
Yeah.
Helping developers work across systems.
So how on earth are criminals using that to evade security?
It's actually quite brilliant in a really cynical way. Think about traditional security software, antivirus, endpoint detection and response, EDR tools.
Yeah.
They're mostly tuned, very meticulously, to spot known bad stuff, malicious executables, weird behavior patterns in the native Windows environment.
Makes sense.
But when Quillen uses WSL, they actually execute their Linux encryptors from inside that Linux subsystem running on the Windows machine.
So the encryption code isn't a standard Windows.exe file.
Right. It's running in this sort of containerized Linux layer within Windows. And that layer, It's often much less scrutinized by those Windows-focused security tools.
So the security software might see a process running in WSL and just assume it's legit developer stuff, a compiler or something.
Pretty much. It might think it's benign, or at least not the kind of Windows threat it's looking for. And meanwhile, this Linux executable running inside WSL is happily encrypting all the files on the main Windows drive.
Wow. That is using a feature against itself, turning compatibility into camouflage.
It's exploiting the assumptions baked into the security model, that anything running inside that subsystem is probably okay, or at least not a direct Windows threat. It lets the encryption run wild, essentially hidden in plain sight.
That really forces a rethink of how endpoint security needs to work. You can't just focus on the native OS anymore.
No, it needs visibility into these subsystems too. Okay, finally in this section, let's pivot to something that hits, well, everyday people, maybe more directly. Standing at the checkout. Mobile payment fraud.
Right, tap to pay. Seems so easy, so secure usually. What's happening there?
There's been an alarming surge. Researchers have found over 760 malicious Android apps. And these aren't just generic malware. They're specifically designed to carry out NFC relay attacks.
NFC near-field communication. That's the tech behind tap to pay. So, relay attack. Explain how that works? How does my simple tap become risky?
So these malicious apps, often disguised as something harmless like a utility app or game, they basically turn the infected phone into a man-in-the-middle device when you go to pay legitimately with your phone's payment app. The malicious app, using the phone's own NFC capability, can potentially intercept the payment data, the token that's generated for that transaction.
Intercept it.
And then immediately relay that information wirelessly to another device controlled by the criminals, who might be nearby or even further away, depending on the setup.
So they're essentially skimming the payment details right as the transaction happens.
That's the idea. They're exploiting the short-range communication to capture and forward the critical data. This surge has been seen particularly across Europe.
So it hits daily habits, makes you think twice about just tapping your phone everywhere.
It definitely proves that even convenient systems introduce new kinds of risk vectors we need to be aware of. Physical proximity risk, in this case.
Okay, so we've laid out this deep crisis of trust in digital security. Now let's shift focus a bit. Let's look at the debates shaping the future of tech itself.
Right, moving into digital culture, AI, where you see these philosophical principles clashing really hard with the commercial realities, especially around AI monetization. Hashtag tag 2.1, the philosophy of open source and digital sovereignty.
And this first story is actually, well, kind of refreshing in a way, a rare moment where ideologies seem to win out over money.
You're talking about the Python Software Foundation, PSF decision.
Exactly. The PSF, they're the nonprofit that governs Python, which is, one of the most critical programming languages in the world, used everywhere.
Absolutely foundational for so much tech.
And they turned down money, a lot of money.
Yeah, they rejected a huge grant. $1.5 million from the National Science Foundation, the NSF.
The NSF, that's a major U.S. government agency funding scientific research. Why on earth would the Python Foundation walk away from that kind of institutional funding?
Well, their reasoning is pretty fascinating. It's a real case study in organizational ethics, I think.
How so?
Their core mission, they say, is all about maintaining diversity, inclusion, and the sort of purity of the open source philosophy that Python was built on. Community-driven.
Okay.
And they basically decided that the strings that might come attached to that NSF grant, maybe specific government oversight, reporting rules, maybe being pushed towards certain research goals.
They felt it would compromise that mission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That it could potentially dilute their commitment to their global, community-driven values, put their independence at risk.
So they chose ideological control, community independence, over a big government check.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which really speaks volumes about that tension, doesn't it, between government influence and the kind of anti-authoritarian roots of a lot of the open source movement.
They basically said, our identity, our promise to our community isn't for sale.
It really underscores a value system that, still exists in parts of the tech world, a value system that fiercely defends individual effort and dedication too.
Yeah, and that came through really clearly in that popular Hacker News item we looked at, right? The story of Visopsys.
Oh, yeah, that was great. An entire operating system.
Maintained by just one single developer since 1997.
Incredible commitment. And the Hacker News community loved it. It got, 276 points, loads of comments.
Why do you think that resonates so strongly, that kind of solo, long-term project?
Because it represents, I think, the ultimate dedication to the craft.
Right.
Completely independent of corporate whims, quarterly earnings, profit motive.
Digital self-determination made real.
Exactly. It pushes back against the idea that only huge corporations can build complex, important software. It's inspiring in that way.
And this idea, digital self-determination, it connects directly to another concept that popped up, digital sovereignty.
Right. Highlighted by that item about OpenDesk by the Center for Digital Sovereignty.
Can you just quickly define digital sovereignty for listeners? It sounds important, but maybe a bit abstract.
Sure. So digital sovereignty is basically the idea that individuals or communities or even whole nations should have full control over their own digital lives.
Meaning control over their data, their software.
Yeah, their data, the digital infrastructure they rely on, their digital destiny, you could say.
Yeah.
Instead of being completely dependent on these massive software ecosystems built and controlled by, foreign tech giants, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, whoever.
So it's about promoting local control, open source alternatives, maybe.
Often, yes. It's kind of like the digital version of food independence. Control your own means of production and distribution. Don't rely entirely on others for something so fundamental. Hashtag Tech 2.2, the AI revolution and its consequences.
Okay, now we pivot into maybe the most charged part of the digital debate right now, artificial general intelligence, AGI.
Yeah, this dominates so much discussion. It's incredibly polarizing, generates a lot of excitement, but also, frankly, a lot of fear.
That fear is definitely palpable. We saw that article, Why Everyone Dies Gets AGI All Wrong. That one sparked the most discussion in our stack, didn't it?
By far. 152 comments. People are intensely debating the existential risks, the timelines, how we could possibly control a superintelligence if we ever build one.
It's not just some academic exercise anymore, is it? It feels like real anxiety about the sheer speed of AI development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are we just building a powerful tool we can manage? Or are we accidentally creating something, maybe like a new kind of intelligence, whose goals might not align with ours, leading to, the everyone dies scenario in the extreme?
But while the online communities are debating, human extinction...
the corporate leaders are busy figuring out how to make money from it now.
Right. Which brings us to Google CEO Sundar Pichai. He just confirmed something many suspected.
Yes. He confirmed that AI-generated search results,
Yeah.
The conversational answers Google is rolling out, they will incorporate ads.
Okay. I guess we all knew that was coming eventually. But it really solidifies AI not just as an info tool, but as the next big advertising platform.
Absolutely. It's the new frontier for monetization.
So what does that actually mean for users? How will we see these ads?
Well, it sounds like the old separation, here the organic results and here the clearly marked sponsored links that's going to blur a lot.
How so?
Pichai said the ads will use new, highly contextual formats. They'll blend, kind of seamlessly, right into the AI's generated answers.
Wait, so the ad might be part of the AI's conversational response?
That seems to be the plan,
Right.
which raises huge ethical questions, right? If an ad is woven directly into what seems like an objective, helpful answer from an AI.
How do you even tell what's fact and what's a sales pitch? Especially if it's done subtly.
Exactly. It completely blurs that line between information utility and commercial promotion.
Yeah.
Makes critical evaluation much harder for the user.
And that blurring of lines, that ability of AI to generate convincing text, it leads directly to another major problem, AI-generated hoaxes.
Yeah. If AI can write a convincing ad, it can definitely write convincing fake news or fake announcements.
And we saw a really striking example of this just recently. Google had to publicly deny a story that went viral.
That was the one claiming a massive data breach, wasn't it? Like 183 million Gmail accounts compromised.
Yeah, a huge catastrophic narrative, totally fabricated, apparently by AI, spread like wildfire on social media.
And Google had to come out and issue a formal statement saying, no, this did not happen.
That's the kind of immediate damage these tools can do in the wrong hands. Creating panic, undermining trust, forcing big companies onto the defensive over something that wasn't even real.
Exactly. The sophistication of these hoaxes is only going to increase. And it ties right back to our main theme, the crisis of trust. If nation-states can hide malware and AI can generate fake disasters.
How does the average person possibly sort fact from fiction anymore? The burden of critical thinking is becoming immense, almost unsustainable.
It really is.
Now, before we move off the digital world entirely, we should acknowledge that amidst all this high-level drama, The tech community itself is still intensely focused on the nuts and bolts.
Oh, absolutely. The engagement we saw on technical deep dives was really high. People are still building things, solving the hard problems.
Like that article, How I Use Every Claude Code Feature, that got a lot of traction.
Yeah, 178 points, 53 comments. Developers are actively sharing tips, figuring out how to best use these new AI coding tools effectively.
And at the same time, there's still focus on really core computer science challenges, like that item on Crossfire.
Right. High-performance lockless BSCP NPM channels for Rust. That's deep in the weeds of making concurrent programming faster and safer, foundational stuff.
And we also saw that Cloudflare piece on anonymous credentials.
Yeah, tackling that constant tension. How do you block bots and bad actors online without completely destroying user privacy?
Yeah.
Rate limiting versus anonymity.
So the engineering curiosity, the drive to build and optimize, it's still very much alive, even as these huge ethical questions about AI and security swirl around everything.
Definitely. The engine room is still humming.
Okay, let's make a sharp turn now. We're moving from the digital realm, the world of code and AI ethics,
To the immediate physical realities unfolding right here on the ground in New York City.
and we're going to connect that theme of institutional failure directly to the consequences people are feeling every day.
But first, maybe just a quick breath. A moment for some genuinely positive news, especially amidst all the heavy stuff.
Yeah, good idea. We just had the 2025 TCS New York City Marathon, which is always just such a powerful display, isn't it? Unity, human endurance.
It really is an incredible event. The scale is just mind-boggling. Over 50,000 runners this year.
50.
Yeah, making their way through all 5 boroughs of the city. That was on November 2nd. It really showcases the city's spirit, but also its ability to handle huge logistical challenges successfully.
And we had some amazing performances, record winners.
We did. Kenya's Benson Kipruto took the men's title. His time was around 2 hours, 8 minutes, 9 seconds. Just flying.
Incredible.
And on the women's side, also from Kenya, Helen Obiri. She won with the time around 2 hours, 19 minutes, 51 seconds.
Wow. And I heard the wheelchair divisions also set records.
That's right. Just amazing athletic achievements all around. It's a great reminder of what the city can do well, even when other things, well, aren't going so well. Hashtag TagTag 3.2, the SNAP crisis and government shutdown.
And that contrast is stark, isn't it? That moment of unity and success set against the backdrop of a really crippling national failure.
Yeah, we have to state the grim reality. The federal government is still shut down. And the consequences are moving way beyond just bureaucratic hassle now. It's becoming a genuine humanitarian issue.
And the most immediate, probably most frightening consequence is hitting food security. The uncertainty around SNAP benefits.
Right. SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's what millions of low-income families rely on to buy groceries.
And food banks here in New York and across the country, they're sounding the alarm.
Loudly. They're warning of an imminent crisis if these SNAP payments stop, or even if they're just delayed significantly because of the shutdown. People depend on that money arriving on time to eat.
The political deadlock is so bad that I read federal judges actually had to get involved.
Yeah, it's reached that bizarre point. Judges issued an order telling the administration they have to pay the SNAP benefits, basically recognizing how catastrophic it would be to just cut off food aid like that.
But even with a court order?
The how is still terrifyingly unclear.
Yeah.
Because the government agencies that actually process and send out those payments, they're still shut down or only partially running because they don't have funding.
So the system itself is broken, even if a judge says pay the money.
Exactly. When you have the judicial branch issuing orders about the logistics of welfare payments, it tells you the executive and legislative branches have just fundamentally failed at one of their most basic duties.
And how are the politicians in D.C. responding? We saw President Trump made a suggestion about how to fix the deadlock.
Yes, he suggested the Senate should basically change its own fundamental operating rules. He argued they should scrap the filibuster rule entirely to resolve the shutdown.
Okay, the filibuster. Break that down quickly. What does that mean, and why is suggesting scrapping it such a big deal?
So, very simply, the filibuster is the Senate rule that usually means you need more than just a simple majority to pass major legislation. You typically need 60 votes, not just 51.
It forces compromise or gridlock, depending on your view.
Right. So scrapping it, sometimes called the nuclear option, would let the party with the simple majority, 51 votes, pass bills much more easily.
And President Trump is suggesting doing that just to end the shutdown.
That was the context, yes. It's a really radical proposal because you're talking about changing the fundamental balance of power in the Senate, potentially forever, just to solve a temporary budget dispute.
We're just reporting what was said, of course.
Absolutely. But it highlights just how broken the political process is.
Yeah.
That changing the core rules is being floated as the only way to pass a basic funding bill to keep the government open and benefits flowing.
And regardless of those D.C. debates, the impact right here in New York City is massive. You said 1.8 million people.
Nearly 1.8 million recipients of SNAP benefits right here in the 5 boroughs. That's almost 1 out of every 5 New Yorkers suddenly facing serious food insecurity because of political paralysis hundreds of miles away.
That's staggering.
It is. But amidst that huge federal failure, you are seeing some resilience locally. City and state officials here have pledged to use local funds, try to plug some of the gap, lessen the blow.
And what about communities themselves?
That's maybe the most powerful response. We're hearing about this grassroots thing, grocery buddies. Neighbors literally stepping up, going to the store with someone whose SNAP benefits haven't arrived and just covering their food bill.
Wow. Creating an ad hoc safety net where the official one failed.
Exactly. People looking out for each other when the system lets them down. It's both heartwarming and, well, deeply concerning that it's necessary. Hashtag 3.3 New York elections and local governance.
Now, today, November 4th, is also Election Day here in NYC. And despite all the chaos coming out of Washington, it seems New Yorkers are actually well engaged.
Yeah, the early voting numbers were really strong. Over 735,000 New Yorkers cast their ballots early, between October 25th and November 2nd. That's a record.
And that turnout is so important right now, isn't it? Because local government really matters, especially when federal support gets shaky.
Immensely. Voters today are deciding on the big citywide offices. The mayor, who's going to be managing the local response to this SNAP crisis, the comptroller, who handles the city's huge finances, the public advocate, borough presidents.
These are the people on the front lines of dealing with the shutdown's impact here.
Absolutely. Their decisions will shape the city's immediate resilience.
And it's not just about the candidates, right? There are ballot proposals, too.
Yes, 6 major ballot proposals for voters to weigh in on. These cover some really complex long-term issues, things like land use rules, which affect neighborhood development, and some questions about the city council's structure and powers. Big decisions for the future of the city.
Okay, and one more local issue looming: potential service disruption.
Yeah, this just adds another layer of uncertainty. Contract talks between the city and hundreds of NYC school bus drivers have stalled. They're at an impasse.
Uh-oh. What does that mean?
Well, it's raising warnings about possible mass layoffs among the drivers, which in turn could lead to major disruptions in school bus service for thousands of students who rely on those routes.
Just what parents need right now: more instability.
Exactly. It just highlights the fragility in even basic city operations when these larger pressures mount. Hashtag 3.4 global crime and social information.
Okay, let's quickly touch on just a few other global and social points before we wrap up and synthesize. What else is out there?
Well, on the international crime beat, there were developments in that Louvre jewel heist in Paris. 2 more suspects have been charged. Shows of those high-value physical thefts are still very much a thing. And separately, the U.S. military conducted another strike down in the Caribbean. They reported it resulted in the deaths of 3 alleged drug smugglers, part of ongoing efforts to intercept trafficking routes.
Okay. But the item that really connects back to our earlier theme, the crisis of information, that was about social media and health advice?
Yes, this one is really troubling. We talked about AI generating fake news. This is about real people getting bad advice.
What's happening?
Doctors are getting increasingly concerned and actively trying to counter medical misinformation because large numbers of young women are apparently relying heavily on social media for birth control advice.
Instead of talking to a doctor or a health professional.
Increasingly, yes. They're turning to platforms like TikTok or Instagram, getting advice from influencers or just random users.
And that's dangerous because...
Because the information is totally unvetted. It can be anecdotal, inaccurate, sometimes dangerously wrong. Complex reproductive health decisions are being influenced by algorithms and peer pressure online without any medical expertise or gatekeeping.
Wow. That's the unregulated information ecosystem directly impacting physical health.
It really is. It's moving beyond political disinformation into potentially life-altering health choices based on bad data.
A serious consequence of where people are choosing or being led to get their information. We should also briefly note, just for context, that horrific train stabbing attack in the UK.
Yes, that led to 10 people being hospitalized, 9 of them with life-threatening injuries. Just a reminder that alongside all these digital and systemic threats, basic physical security remains a paramount and sometimes tragically unmet need.
A sobering reality. Okay, let's try and pull some of this together. Hashtag outro, hashtag 4.1 clip of the day selection.
All right. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from, super sophisticated cyber espionage down to empty grocery shelves.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one single item, one story that really encapsulates the core theme running through all of this, that failure of trust, what would be our clip of the day?
That's tough because there are so many contenders. But for me, I think it has to be the plea of Peter Williams, the L3 Harris executive.
Why him specifically?
Because it represents the ultimate betrayal of trust, doesn't it? We can build the most advanced technical defenses, spend billions on security. But when a highly placed, highly trusted person decides to sell the nation's own digital weapons, classified tools, to a Russian broker purely for personal greed.
It just shows the human element. That's the vulnerability you can never fully patch.
Exactly. It's the definitive, unpatchable 0 day in any security system, that raw intersection of high-level access and simple avarice.
I have to agree. That story, that clash of national security and personal greed, compromising secrets for profit, it really does capture the essence of the trust breakdown we've discussed. Peter Williams is our clip of the day. A profound cautionary tale. Hashtag 4.2 synthesis and provocative thought.
So let's try to synthesize this for you, our listener. What's the takeaway from this deep dive? We've really navigated two parallel crises today, haven't we?
I think so. First, there's the crisis of information. We saw it with sophisticated state cyber attacks like Bronze Butler, clever criminal evasion like Quillen using WSL.
Right through to AI generating convincing hoaxes and social media platforms spreading dangerous health advice. It's getting harder and harder to know what's real and reliable.
And second, there's the corresponding crisis in our physical safety and our governance. We saw that in the Peter Williams betrayal from within defense, and most starkly, in the SNAP crisis. Nearly 2 million people in just one city facing hunger because of political failure at the federal level.
It all seems to circle back to power, doesn't it? Who holds it, how information is used or misused, and whether we can trust the systems and people in charge.
Which brings us perfectly to our proverb of the day. And wow, does this one feel relevant right now, especially in this digital age? It's from Proverbs 18.21 in the King James Version. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Words hold immense power. Information holds immense power.
So here's the provocative thought we want to leave you with today. Connect that ancient wisdom to right now. If words, if information, the tongue in the digital age truly hold the power of life and death, what fruit are we collectively eating right now? We're consuming information from AI that blends ads into answers, from platforms where unvetted advice can dictate health choices, in a world where convincing fake news can spread instantly. When we delegate the power of the tongue, the power to shape reality to these automated systems, these profit-driven platforms.
How do we, as individuals, as a community, take back control? How do we ensure the fruit we're eating from our information ecosystem is life-giving, not destructive? How do we regain power over the narrative?
Maybe it starts by consciously thinking about the source and the intent behind every single piece of data you consume today. Who benefits from you believing this? Hashtag 4.3, final sign-off.
Some heavy thoughts to end on, but crucial ones. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive and for sticking with us as we try to make sense of these complex, interconnected crises.
We hope it gives you the context you need to navigate your world. Keep seeking knowledge. Keep asking questions.
Adios, humans.